I can still feel the jolt of that moment surging through me, like a bolt of lightning striking right at the core of everything I held dear as I crested the hill on that winding dirt road, the one I'd driven 100 times before with a sense of calm anticipation, only to be met with absolute devastation. My beloved Whispering Pines retreat, that sturdy little cabin I'd pour my soul into, not just damaged, but utterly obliterated, reduced to a chaotic heap of splintered timbers, shattered glass, and mangled fixtures scattered across the once serene clearing. And there, half buried in the churned-up soil, catching a cruel glint of sunlight, lay my vintage pocket watch, the faithful companion that had ticked through 2 decades of relentless fraud investigations, its intricate engravings now twisted and crushed under the merciless treads of a bulldozer, a heartbreaking emblem of the life I'd meticulously built away from the chaos, now violated in the most brutal way imaginable. And as the dust settled around me, I heard the coarse laughter of the work crew echoing off the pines, one burly guy in a hard hat leaning on his machine, spotting my stunned expression and hollering out with this infuriating smirk, "Tough break, pal. Looks like Evergreen Heights HOA decided this spot's prime real estate for the big shots. Not some lone wolf like you." His words hanging in the air like a taunt, igniting a slow-burning fury within me. Because this wasn't mere misfortune. Oh no, this was a deliberate assault on my sanctuary, a declaration of hostility from forces I thought I'd left behind. And in that instant, standing amidst the ruins, I knew I had to dig deep into the skills I'd honed over years of unraveling deceptions, to fight back, to reclaim what was mine, even if it meant stepping back into the shadows I'd fled. Looking back, my decision to walk away from it all had felt like salvation at the time. After 20 grueling years as a fraud investigator for the agency, chasing down slick operators who cooked books and swindled innocents, the kind of work that left you jaded, sleepless, questioning if integrity even existed anymore. So I cashed out early, seeking refuge in the untamed beauty of the ridge, purchasing that parcel of land just outside the clutches of Evergreen Heights, a glossy suburban enclave with its pristine streets, enforced aesthetics, and overreaching rules. But my title was spotless, verified by surveyors and county records, free from any HOA entanglements, or at least that's what the paperwork promised, allowing me to envision a life of simple joys. Dawn hikes through mist-shrouded forests, evenings by the fire with a good book, the rhythmic chirp of crickets lulling me to sleep. Far removed from the cutthroat world where I'd lost friends to burnout, relationships to the grind, and perhaps a sliver of my own optimism. Yet here I was in this haven I'd carved out, only to sense the encroaching shadows of that same corruption I'd escaped, creeping in like fog rolling down the hills. The initial intrusions were subtle, almost dismissible at first, like faint alarm bells in the back of my mind. Starting with that afternoon, when my old pickup got hemmed in on the narrow access trail by a pompous HOA patrol volunteer in a golf cart, flashing his badge like it was some badge of honor, insisting I produce a resident permit to proceed, his tone dripping with entitlement, as if the entire ridge bowed to their whims, and me, chuckling inwardly at the absurdity while politely explaining I wasn't part of their club, driving on, but feeling a twinge of unease, wondering if it was just bureaucratic overreach or something more calculated. And then came the anonymous missives, these cryptic warnings appearing out of nowhere, slipped under my door during the night, wedged in my mailbox at the road's end, declaring imminent action for boundary infractions and stiff, legalese language that reeked of intimidation, vague threats designed to unsettle without committing to specifics, making me pause during my daily routines, scanning the tree line for prying eyes, and sure enough, they materialized, these elusive observers lurking at the periphery, their binoculars flashing briefly in the afternoon light as they noted God knows what from afar, unfamiliar sedans lingering too long on the shoulder, their engines idling with ominous patience, fresh boot prints in the soft earth near my fence that didn't match my own, and one particularly chilling evening as I sat by the window nursing a cup of herbal tea to unwind, the unmistakable snap of a twig outside jolted me upright. heart pounding in a rhythm I hadn't felt since stakeouts in dimly lit warehouses, realizing with a sinking dread that the hunter had become the hunted, this violation stirring up old wounds, the isolation I'd cherished now feeling like vulnerability and it gnawed at my peace. This insidious erosion of my hard-won tranquility, forcing me to confront the possibility that my past life of exposing greed had followed me here, disguised in the form of neighborhood tyrants. As the harassments mounted, layering on like storm clouds gathering force, I couldn't ignore the escalating menace anymore, the way these incidents wove together into a tapestry of deliberate aggression, prompting me to dust off my investigative toolkit, installing discreet trail cameras camouflaged among the branches and rocks, their lenses silently vigilant, capturing nocturnal wanderers in infrared glow, hooded silhouettes slinking through the underbrush, probing my defenses, sketching crude maps under flashlight beams, and poring over the footage in the dim light of my laptop. Piecing together timestamps and patterns like a puzzle from my agency days, it dawned on me with chilling clarity that this wasn't amateur hour pranks or random spite. No, this was methodical preparation, a prelude to annihilation, their movements too coordinated, too purposeful, hinting at a larger scheme where my modest retreat stood as an obstacle to some lucrative ambition. And in those quiet hours of analysis, a mix of anger and resolve welled up inside me, tinged with a wry amusement at how these suburban schemers underestimated the man they targeted, thinking a reclusive ex-cop would fold easily. But oh, how wrong they were, because if there's one thing my career taught me, it's that silence often masks the deadliest counterstrike. And as I plotted my next moves, the tension coiled tighter, the air thick with impending conflict, my mind racing through scenarios, balancing the urge for immediate retaliation with the wisdom of gathering irrefutable proof, all while the wilderness around me seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the storm to break. The hammer fell without mercy, catching me off guard during what should have been a mundane trip into town for groceries and hardware, leaving my home unguarded for just a few hours, only to return to a scene of utter desolation. The bulldozer's roar fading into the distance as it retreated down the trail, leaving behind a scarred landscape where my cabin once stood proud, debris strewn like the aftermath of a natural disaster. But this was man-made malice, papers caught in the breeze revealing counterfeit demolition decrees, forged with sloppy replicas of official stamps and signatures that any seasoned eye like mine could spot as fraudulent from a mile away, yet potent enough to dupe the hired muscle into action. And as I knelt in the wreckage, sifting through the remnants with trembling hands, salvaging what little I could, faded photographs of family long gone, a cracked mug from better days, the grief twisted into determination, because beneath the surface-level destruction lay the fingerprints of a sophisticated racket, not mere vandalism, but a calculated expropriation driven by the glittering allure of the Ridgeview expansion project, where ambitious developers eyed the untapped potential of the Ridge for upscale villas and resorts. My independent plot the pesky thorn in their blueprint for domination, and it stung deeply. This realization that my slice of paradise was collateral in their quest for millions, echoing the corporate embezzlements I dismantled in my former life, but now personal, invasive, stripping away not just property, but the essence of my retreat, fueling a righteous indignation that propelled me forward, vowing to unearth every dirty secret, to make them regret ever crossing my path. Treating the site like a fresh crime scene, I methodically gathered clues amid the chaos, bagging fragments of altered surveys that brazenly shifted lines to engulf my territory, digital trails and the metadata pointing to hasty manipulations on HOA office computers, timestamps betraying late-night edits, and following the breadcrumbs up the hierarchy unveiled the culprits. The Evergreen Heights HOA Board, a cabal of self-serving elites who'd traded community welfare for personal windfalls. Their insidious Phase 4 Ridge reclamation detailed in pilfered documents as an aggressive strategy to absorb non-compliant lands, all incentivized by a jaw-dropping $2.4 million bonus from Summit Builders Corporation, a revelation that boiled my blood, highlighting the raw injustice of it all. How these guardians of the neighborhood morphed into predators, exploiting loopholes and forging paths to enrichment at the expense of outsiders like me, and in quieter moments, reflecting on the betrayal. I couldn't help but inject a touch of dark humor into my thoughts, picturing these boardroom barons in their tailored suits, sipping lattes while plotting my downfall, oblivious to the storm they were brewing, their hubris a classic flaw I'd seen doom many a fraudster before, strengthening my commitment to dismantle their facade, to expose the rot festering beneath their polished exterior, because justice, in my experience, thrives on persistence, and I had plenty to spare. Fate, or perhaps a crack in their armor, delivered an unexpected boon in the form of Sarah Klein, a mid-level board member whose guild had apparently eroded her loyalty, arranging a clandestine rendezvous in a dimly lit booth at a roadside cafe, her hands shaking as she passed over a thumb drive laden with incriminating internals. Email chains boasting about neutralizing the Ridge squatter. Verbatim transcripts from closed-door sessions where they mocked my hermit existence with callous jests, as if my life were a punchline. And absorbing it all, the layers of conspiracy unfolding like a bad thriller, it amplified the tragedy, the way power corrupted these everyday folks into villains, preying on the isolated, the unconnected, mirroring the societal fractures I'd witnessed in my career, but here in this personal arena, it hit with visceral force, blending sorrow for the community's unwitting complicity with a steely resolve to flip the narrative, and armed with this insider gold, it devised my counteroffensive, adopting the guise of a network technician from a fabricated IT firm, complete with a clipboard and jargon-laden spiel, infiltrating their sleek headquarters nestled in the manicured heart of Evergreen Heights, upgrading their systems while covertly mirroring servers, extracting troves of classified data, bribery ledgers, manipulated geospatial files, emergency protocols for defiant landowners. And with this arsenal, I sowed discord from the shadows, dispatching veiled alerts to individual members about potential breaches, monitoring their frantic exchanges as suspicion fractured alliances, board chats devolving into finger-pointing paranoia. And it was almost comical, in a grim sort of way, observing these titans of suburbia unravel, their once impenetrable unity splintering under the weight of their own deceit, the tension ratcheting up as I anticipated their backlash, knowing the game had shifted, no longer prey, but predator, my inner monologue, a whirlwind of strategy and emotion, the love for my lost home morphing into a fierce protectiveness, a drive to avenge not just the physical loss but the assault on my dignity. Yet they countered with desperation, intensifying their campaign of terror, vehicles shadowing my every move on twilight excursions, anonymous calls hissing veiled warnings through distorted voices, figures loitering outside my makeshift lodgings in a seedy motel on the town's edge, building an atmosphere of suffocating dread that tested my nerves, evoking flashbacks to high-stakes pursuits where one wrong step meant disaster. But I refused to cower, instead reversing the roles with calculated precision, tailing a key operative under cover of night, cornering him in a deserted parking lot with a dossier of his misdeeds, his bravado crumbling as I outlined the dominoes poised to fall starting with him, the color leaching from his face in the sodium glow of street lamps. And it paid off, their machinery grinding to a halt amid blunders, unencrypted messages, overlooked alibis, affirming their descent into chaos. The board's composure fracturing irreparably, and amid this whirlwind, solitude amplified my reflections, the isolation of the fight weighing heavy, yet underscored by a profound sense of purpose, defending the sanctity of family-like bonds to one's chosen ground, the righteous thrill of impending reckoning tempering the fear as the plot hurtled toward its explosive zenith, every nerve alive with the drama of it all. The powder keg ignited in the opulent auditorium of the Evergreen Heights Community Center, amid their lavish yearly assembly, crystal chandeliers casting a deceptive glow over mingling elites in designer attire, clinking glasses and superficial chatter filling the space. Utterly unprepared for the upheaval I was about to unleash, striding through the double doors with purposeful calm. My laptop connected to the projector in a swift, undetected hack, flooding the enormous screen with incontrovertible proof, surreptitious recordings of illicit negotiations, falsified diagrams redrawing territories with audacious strokes, transaction logs tracing bribes back to their sources, and as murmurs swelled into outright pandemonium, I stepped into the spotlight, shedding my anonymity to declare myself Alex Reed, the retired fraud buster whose track record eclipsed their petty ploys. The revelation sending shockwaves through the assembly, denials clashing with evidence, the air electric, with betrayal and outrage, a cinematic climax where masks slipped and truths blared. The injustice laid bare for all to see, my voice steady but laced with the pent-up emotion of months endured. The fallout cascaded like an unstoppable avalanche, commencing with Marcus Hale, the imperious HOA president, his authoritative facade shattering as law enforcement, forewarned by my discreet alerts, surged in with warrants, slapping cuffs on his wrists amid flashing badges and stunned gasps, his indignant protests drowned out by the symphony of justice in motion. Bored accomplices herded away in succession under the glare of spotlights, forensic accountants descending to seize ledgers and freeze fortunes, exposing a web of financial improprieties that sprawled beyond the ridge. Embezzled dues, phantom vendors, offshore hides, and culminating in the irrevocable disbandment of the Evergreen Heights HOA, this monolithic entity crumbling under the scrutiny it had long evaded, the shockwaves reverberating to Summit Builders Corporation, their grand vision iced by regulatory halts. Stock plummeting in the ensuing scandal, a poetic reversal where the architects of destruction faced their own ruin, the media circus amplifying the biopic-like drama, headlines screaming of suburban tyranny toppled, and in witnessing it, a bittersweet satisfaction bloomed, mingled with empathy for the residents ensnared in the deceit, yet affirmed by the necessity of this cathartic purge, illustrating how authority, when unchecked, sows the seeds of its own demise, rotting from the core outward. The legal battles unfolded in austere courtrooms, a procession of hearings where my amassed proofs formed an impregnable fortress, dismantling their feeble excuses, administrative oversights, well-intentioned expansions. With forensic precision, judges nodding gravely as exhibits piled high, verdicts raining down convictions for racketeering, forgery, and trespass, blending incarcerations with punitive damages that stripped away their opulent lifestyles, civil judgments funneling restitution. My way, enough to heal the wounds inflicted. And through it all, I stood as witness, the underdog's triumph, a beacon against systemic unfairness, the proceedings underscoring the profound unfairness of power imbalances, the way familial devotion to one's haven, be it blood kin or chosen solitude, fuels unyielding resistance, and emerging from the fray, the ridge reclaimed its wild essence, untainted by avarice, a testament to perseverance amid adversity. In the aftermath, renewal beckoned, my hands callous from labor as I oversaw the resurrection of a fortified abode, beams rising sturdier than before, incorporating vigilant safeguards and expansive vistas from the rebuilt veranda, and with a chisel and grip, I etched the proclamation myself, private haven, trespassers will be prosecuted, staking it prominently at the gateway, a defiant marker of sovereignty restored, where mornings now dawned with unadulterated serenity, the forests, symphony enveloping me once more, scars fading into stories of resilience, the affection for this land deepened by the trial, transforming vengeance into a harmonious reclamation, and in this reclaimed quietude, I pondered the journey's toll, the humor in outwitting the mighty with wits alone, the tension resolved into peace, realizing that true retribution lies not in mirroring destruction, but in rising above it, forging endurance from the ashes, a closure that whispered of lessons learned. Power's fragility when confronted by truth, and the quiet strength of those who choose solitude, yet stand unbowed. Yet, as I mull over the saga's twists and turns, the raw emotions and hard-won victories, it prompts a deeper inquiry. What say you? Was my quest for redress a paragon of ethical fortitude? Or did it veer into the gray realms of self-administered law, challenging the boundaries of right and wrong, and in our era of entrenched inequalities? Can the pursuit of fairness ever truly sidestep the moral ambiguities when the scales are so heavily tipped?